Humans, let's be real. Are you actually healing, or are you just distracting yourself so you won't have to feel? Because let's talk about it. Some of y'all call it the healing era. But deep down, it's a distraction era. New routines, new hobbies, new situationships, anything but sitting with yourself. And I get it. Because that real work, that shit is uncomfortable. But avoiding your feelings is not the same as healing. So today, we're diving into the difference between real healing and just keeping yourself busy. Welcome to Vibes N Affirmations, where there's a thin line between crashing out and keeping it all together. I'm your host, G, your favorite voice of reason and sometimes chaos. And today, we're calling out fake healing for what it actually is. Let's be honest, sometimes we think we're healing, but we're actually just stacking distractions, anything to avoid facing ourselves. You're in the gym, or are you actually processing anything? You're out every weekend, but the second you're alone, you feel empty. If the version of healing looks like keeping yourself too busy and you never sit with your emotions, you're not really healing. You're running, because real healing isn't always fun. It's not always aesthetic. It's uncomfortable. It is lonely. It feels like a breakdown before a breakthrough. So, let's talk about it. How do you know if you're really healing or you just running from your own thoughts? Let's get into it. You felt the vibes, so now let's ground ourselves with today's affirmation. Are you ready? I give myself permission to slow down and feel, because real healing requires honesty. Yes, say it with me. I give myself permission to slow down and feel, because real healing requires honesty. Because here's the truth. Healing isn't always pretty. It's not wellness routines, aesthetically pleasing journaling, soft life vibes, or whatever y'all be saying these days. It's messy, it's raw, it's uncomfortable, it's facing the things you have buried, the emotions you have ignored, and the pain you thought you could outrun. It's not about numbing yourself with distractions, staying busy, or jumping from one thing to the next just to avoid sitting with what hurts. It's about actually processing what happened, allowing yourself to feel, and actually working through it instead of running from it. Let's be honest, that's not easy. It is tempting to keep pushing forward, to convince yourself that you're fine, to use work, people, or just routine as a way to avoid the heaviness. Keep skipping through the uncomfortable parts, you'll never actually heal. Healing isn't just about you moving on. It's about dealing with what hurt you. It's about understanding your wounds, learning from them, making sure they don't control you anymore. But here's the tricky part. Sometimes we trick ourselves into thinking that we have healed, when actually we just gotten better at avoiding our own pain. Fake healing looks like movement, but no progress. It feels productive because you're doing this, you're doing that, but deep down, you're actually keeping yourself distracted. Here's how to tell you're actually healing or just running. Keeping yourself busy at all costs. Work, hobbies, new goals, anything to avoid sitting with your own shit. Distractions, they feel safe. You're constantly working, setting new goals, feeling everything in your schedule, just so you won't have to sit in silence. But here's the truth. You can't sit with yourself without feeling restless. That's a sign you still have some work to do. Staying busy isn't the same as healing. Jumping from one situation to the next, new relationships, new friendships, new cities, always looking for an eternal fix. Every time something ends, you already moved on to the next thing. A new person, a new friend group, a new city, a new career move. You tell yourself you're evolving, but you're just constantly running. Or are you just escaping? Healing means addressing emotions, not replacing them for something new. Becoming overly positive to avoid pain. Convincing yourself everything is fine instead of admitting what actually hurt you. You tell yourself everything happens for a reason. or my personal favorite, it is what it is. Before we even acknowledge the pain, you try to positive think your way out of reality that something might actually have hurt you. But suppressing your emotions in the name of staying positive only creates deeper wounds. Self care as a mask, buying candles, taking bubble baths, but stay ignoring the inner work. Self care is great, it is necessary. But if your healing consists of bubble baths, face masks, retail therapy, but no actual self reflection, accountability, or emotional processing, you're not healing. You're putting a band aid on it. Yup. Healing isn't just treating yourself, it's doing the inner work, pretending you're over it when you're not, acting unbothered, but still replaying the past. You tell yourself, yeah, I'm fine. You laugh it off, say, I'm over it, and convince yourself that you actually moved on. But late at night, you still replaying the conversation, still feeling the sting of what happened, still checking up, still questioning what went wrong. If you still feel the need to prove you're not bothered, guess what? You're still bothered. Healing means truly letting go, not just pretending that you have. So, are you healing or are you just keeping yourself distracted? Be real with yourself. Are you actually working through your emotions or you just doing anything you can to avoid them? Are you truly at peace or you just numbing yourself to avoid dealing with discomfort? If you stop distracting yourself, what feelings will you be forced to confront? Healing is not about how much you do. It's about how deeply you allow yourself to feel, process, release. It's not only to truly heal, it's to face it, sit with it, work through it. Because at the end of the day, the only way out is through. Real shit. I was talking to one of my best friends the other day. She admitted something that really hit deep. She feels down when she's not busy or distracted. If she's not working, socializing, or throwing herself onto the next productive task, she starts to feel the weight of everything she's been avoiding. And that made me think, how many of us are guilty of the same thing? We convince ourselves that being busy means that we're actually doing all right. As long as we're moving, we must be okay. But the moment things slow down, that's when the emotions we've been dodging start creeping back in. The sadness, the disappointment, the unresolved feelings, it all surfaces when it's finally all silent. Filling your schedule up to the brim won't erase the things that you have not dealt with. The weight of unprocessed emotions do not just disappear just because we have managed to learn how to ignore them just a little longer. At some point, you have to sit with it. You have to sit with what you've been running from. So, if you're someone who feels only okay when you're busy, ask yourself, am I truly moving forward or am I just running in circles? Honestly, sometimes the hardest thing to do is to slow down long enough to actually feel. That conversation, it made me pause. It made me reflect on a time where I was healing, or was I really truly busy and pretending that I was? I kept myself occupied with everything under the sun. I was hitting the gym religiously, telling myself if I look good, I must feel good too. Because let's be real, when you're physically improving, it is easy to ignore how you actually feel. I was out every weekend convincing myself that if I was around people, it meant I was okay. Because if you sat me down in a quiet room with my own thoughts, I'll start spiraling. Yeah. The silence would have forced me to face what I've been actually running from. Healing is not about just staying busy. It's about processing what's beneath the surface. It is easy to convince yourself that movement equals progress. As long as you're doing things, you must be healing. But here's the hard truth. Healing is not about what you do. It's about what you're willing to process. Real healing does not happen in distractions. It happens in stillness. Can you sit in silence without reaching for your phone? Can you be alone without needing external validation? Can you exist without drowning yourself in productivity? Because sitting in silence with your own thoughts, it's eye-opening, it's uncomfortable, and sometimes it's terrifying. When there's no noise, no distractions, no one to validate your avoidance, you're left with the raw truth of what's truly going on inside. Some people, silence, it brings peace. For others, it brings everything that they've been avoiding. Silence it exposes the truth. It forces you to confront your emotions, the regrets, the patterns, the cycles you keep repeating. And a lot of us, we stay busy just so we won't have to deal with that shit. But the moment you stop running, you realize some wounds you thought were healed are still lingering. Some memories are still sitting in ways you did not expect. If you feel uncomfortable in stillness, it's because there's something that you have not dealt with yet. At first, silence can feel like the enemy. When you spend so much time filling the gaps with noise, social media, work, constant plans, endless distractions, being alone with your own thoughts can feel fucking unbearable. But once you push past the initial discomfort, something shifts. Something shifts. Silence stops being something to fear. It becomes a tool. It helps you listen to your own needs. When life is loud, it is easy to prioritize what everyone else expects from you. But when you sit in silence, you actually get to hear your own voice. What do you need? What has your intuition been trying to tell you? But emotions don't just disappear because we ignore them. They wait, they linger. And if you don't process them, they manifest in other ways: stress, anxiety, burnout, physical tension in your body. Silence gives those emotions the space to come out so they can actually express themselves and you have to deal with them. All right, let's sit with this for a second. And I really mean sit with it. No distractions, no background noise, just you and your thoughts for a minute. If you felt called out today, good. That means there's something here for you. Here's what I want you to reflect on. Ask yourself, where in my life am I avoiding my emotions? What's one thing I keep distracting myself from? What's one uncomfortable truth I need to face? Breathe that in, because the real healing, it starts when you stop running. This is not about judgment, it's about awareness. Because you can't heal what you don't acknowledge. And I promise, whatever you've been avoiding is not as scary as you think. You're strong enough to face it. Take some time after this episode. Maybe grab your journal, go on a quiet walk, sit with your shit for a few. And if you're ready to get real about how you really feel and you're healing, DM me, drop a comment. I want to hear what came up for you. So let's take a deep breath and repeat after me. I give myself permission to slow down and feel, because healing requires honesty. We live in a world that glorifies doing more work, more goals, more distractions, more productivity, because it feels good if you keep moving, right? So you won't have to feel. But here's the thing. Healing is not about how much you can do. It's about how much you can sit with, process, and release. Sometimes the real work isn't adding more things to your plate. It's slowing down enough to actually face what's weighing you down. Distractions feel good in the moment. Scrolling, working, partying, self-care routines, even going to the gym every day. These things can feel productive, but they can also be avoidance in disguise. Because if the moment you stop moving, you start spiraling, that's not healing, that's running. So ask yourself, are you truly moving forward, or are you just moving in a circle? Are you actually working through your emotions, or you're just doing everything in your power to avoid them? Because at the end of the day, the only way out is through. You can't skip through the hard part. You cannot avoid grief, the anger, the sadness, the confusion. You cannot just outwork your healing. You have to sit with it, feel it, process it. Because real growth happens not in distractions, but in stillness. That's a wrap for this episode of Vibes and Affirmations. If this message hit home, don't keep it to yourself. Send it to someone who needs to hear it, who needs a reminder, because sometimes the best thing we could do for the people we care about is share the gems that help us. And listen, if you haven't already, hit the follow button. You don't want to miss next week's episode. We're getting into something just as real: the art of saying no, protecting your peace without feeling fucking guilt. Have you ever struggled with setting boundaries and felt bad for turning people down? Find yourself saying yes to shit that you really meant hell no to? This is the episode for you. It's time to stop feeling guilty for protecting our own peace. Until next time, humans, stay solid and keep vibing.